What was I thinking? Well, I know what I was thinking. I was thinking that I could beat the snowstorm back home. I should have been able to, but the snowstorm must have accelerated. Now here I was, stuck, driving through the snowstorm, tying to stay on the road. Of course, I had to travel slower than what the speed limit was. Way slower. This meant that what should have taken an hour and a half was now at least 3 hours. Of course, that's assuming I hadn't taken a turn I wasn't supposed to, or missed a turn I was supposed to take. Even driving as slow as I was, I should have passed another town by now. If I didn't find a town with a hotel in it soon, I would have to pull over and sleep in my car. A gust of wind blew snow across my windshield and pushed me to the side of the road. I was barely able to dodge a tree that I saw once I could see a little further. This was getting dangerous. Then, by some miracle, the storm seemed to let up and I was entering a small town. Hopefully this town had a hotel or something that I could rent a room in for the night. I saw someone coming out of what looked to be a cafe and locking it up. I pulled over and rolled down my window. "Excuse me," I said, sticking my head out. The person turned around and I could see that it was a woman in her mid to late 30s. She came up to my window and said, "Do you need some help, sir? You must, since I haven't seen you in town before." "Yeah, I do need some help," I said with a little smile. "I think I got lost in the snowstorm, and I need a place for the night." "Well, Millie's Hotel is just 5 blocks further down Main Street," the woman said with a smile. "She'll have a room for you." "Thank you, miss," I said and waited for her to respond with a name. "Appleton," the woman said with a smile. "Holly Appleton. You can just call me Holly." "Nice to meet you, Holly," I said with a genuine smile. "My name's Rick. Thank you for providing me with directions." "Oh, it wasn't any trouble," Holly said, waving it off. "I'm always happy to help someone who finds their way into our town, but I need to get going. I have a little one at home that needs her mother to read her a story before bed. I'm sure I'll see you around." With that, she turned and walked to a parked car. The hotel was pretty easy to spot, thanks to the sign that said Millie's Hotel. The lobby was pretty spacious for a small town hotel. They even had a fireplace and a flat-screen TV above it, with the movie Die Hard playing on it. There was a woman who appeared to be in her late 40s behind the front desk, and she smiled at me as I entered. "You must be here for a room," she said, genuine friendliness radiating from her. "I am," I said, walking up to the front desk. "I got caught in the snowstorm and almost hit a tree. It's a good thing that I found this town when I did. I think I might have died in the snowstorm if I hadn't." The woman's smile faltered for a second before she said, "Well, you're safe now. I'm Millie Hartgrave, by the way. Now, what name will you be checking in under?" "Richard Plunkett," I said, noticing the strange way she phrased the question. "How much will the room cost for the night?" "It's usually $60 per night, but I'll waive it for the duration of your stay," Millie said, writing stuff down in a ledger. "I can afford $60 for the night," I said, pulling out my card. "I insist on it," Millie said, being so friendly that it was hard to refuse. "Besides, our pose is down, so we can only accept cash." I let out a little sigh. I didn't have any cash on me. "I do want to pay for my room, though. Is there any place where I can withdraw some money?" "I'm afraid there isn't tonight," Millie said, shaking her head. "Everyone that has come here has said their pose was down as well. We can't even get any TV or internet here tonight. All we can do is put in movies that we've either downloaded, legally by the way, or have a physical copy of. You'll be able to browse our collection of digital movies from the TV in your room if you want to watch something." "Oh, I can just watch from my phone as well," I said, taking out my phone to check the service. To my dismay, there was no service. "Storm must have taken out the cell tower as well. You're pretty much stuck with no money," Millie said, nodding. "So just accept the free room for the duration of your stay here. I guess I have no choice unless I sleep in my car," I said with a sigh. "All right, you win. I don't really like it all that much, though." "All right, here's your key," Millie said, handing me a key. "We also offer a laundry service with the room. Just put your clothes into the bag that's in the room outside your door, and we'll have them cleaned and bring them up to you in the morning." "Thanks," I said with a little wave, and went up to the room. I had expected a small room with only enough space for a bed, a dresser, maybe a table with 2 chairs, a bedside table, and a small bathroom. That's not what I walked into, however. The first thing that I noticed was the fireplace, with a fire going in it, at the other end of the room. Then the chair and sofa opposite it, with a table in between, on which I could see some lit candles and possibly a bowl of apples. Then there was the table with pens and paper on it, and 2 chairs at it. Closest to me was like an office desk. I could see the corner of what I assumed was the base of the bed behind the wall, and that brought my attention to the mirror on the closet. It showed a view into the bathroom, since the wall and door there were made of glass, allowing anyone to see into it from the room. This room was not one for families. unless they were nudists. I turned my head to peer into the bathroom and saw that the tub was already filled with steam coming off of it. But there were also what looked to be rose petals floating in it. Had someone heard me talking with Millie and come up here to prepare a nice bath for me? It was looking that way. I quickly found the bag for laundry and took off my clothes, even putting the panties I had been wearing in there, without really thinking. After putting the bag outside the door, I slipped into the bath. Oh, it felt so good and smelt so nice. They must have added some rose scent to the water as well. Whatever it was, just the thing to help me relax. I hadn't noticed how tense I was, more than likely from driving in the snowstorm. But now as I relaxed in the bath, I couldn't help but notice it as it drained away. I have to say that I did not expect this from a hotel in a small town. I doubted they got many guests staying the night, so the offer to waive the room fee was really generous. I would have to find out the name of this town and come back again when I needed a break from life. I wasn't sure how long I soaked in the tub, but I was starting to fall asleep. With a heavy sigh, I got out and collected the rose petals before draining the tub. I suddenly realised that I had nothing to sleep in as I was drying off, and I was sure that my clothes would have been picked up by now. With no other alternative, I wrapped a towel around me like a woman does, hey, I don't like my chest and lack of breasts on display, and went out to close the curtains that I was sure would be open. I was right, and the curtains were indeed open. I closed them and let the towel fall down now that no one could be looking. I turned to the bed and saw that there were rose petals on it as well. I smiled and picked them off so they wouldn't leave any stains. I was just about to climb into the bed when I realised that the lights were still on and the candles were still lit on the table. After I took care of those things, I left the fireplace since it was contained and gave off a nice flickering glow. I settled into the bed and pulled the sheets up. I was once again wrapped in the smell of roses, some of it from my bath, but most of it probably from the sheets being sprayed with some rose fragrance. I drifted off to sleep with a smile on my face. The morning came, and I got up a little bit bleary-eyed. That had been one of the best nights of sleep I've ever had, and I did not want to get up. However, nature called, and so I had to. I didn't notice anything off until I got to the toilet and looking in the mirror above it. I saw a surprised look come over my face that wasn't my face. My hand went to grab my arm as I just stood there looking at myself in the mirror. How was this possible? I mean, I wasn't complaining about being a girl now. And yes, I could feel the lack of male equipment and the presence of female equipment down there, but people just don't switch sex overnight. Then my brain started engaging properly, and I thought about some myths and legends, and the Bible, even though I wasn't religious. I had heard of the story of Lot's wife being transformed into a pillar of salt for looking back at the destruction of Sodom. Then there are the mythical stories of gods transforming people into spiders, monsters, trees, and other stuff like that. Then you have the legends of creatures like werewolves that go from human to animal and back. Given what just happened to me, I would have to say those stories at least have the very real potential of being real. But I'd say they were real. So does that mean a god or goddess decided to transform me in my sleep? If so, which one? The urgency of needing to pee brought me out of my thoughts. With a mental shrug, I turned around and pulled up the hem of my nightgown and pulled down my panties, though why I would be wearing them when I went to bed naked is a mystery. I sat down like I always did, hey, there's no mess to clean up that way, and did my business. It felt a little weird coming from a different angle and tickling my labia as it passed. I had just finished washing my hands when there was a knock on the door and Millie said, "Miss Plunkett, I have your clothes, some makeup, and breakfast for you." Millie obviously knew that I had become a girl. Why else would she call me Miss Plunkett and have brought some makeup? Considering that she knew then, she might also know how it happened and why. I cracked open the door to make sure it was Millie and then let her in. As she came in, I started to say, "How come?" "I'll answer your questions after I've given you the answer to the frequently asked questions," Millie said, holding up a hand. "For now, you sit and eat your breakfast." "All right, Mum," I said sarcastically. "You joke, but there is the possibility that I'm your mother now," Millie said with a slight laugh. "I can't be sure, but I don't normally waive the room fee." "That brings up some more questions," I said with a nervous laugh. Millie placed the tray of food on the writing table and uncovered it. Looking pointedly at me, she said, "Eat." My stomach chose that moment to growl, and so I sat down and started eating. "Now for some answers," Millie said, sitting down herself. "First, I knew you were likely to change when you told me you thought you might have died in the storm if you hadn't found our little town. I was sure of it when I came down to work and was told that your clothes had been transformed. You see, Winter's Hollow, at least this town by that name, doesn't appear on any maps because it's not stationary. It turns up here and there, seemingly at random, unless we're getting a delivery. It's also permanently winter here. One of the things the town does is appear to those who are about to die in some type of winter weather, and then it changes them. You're not the first one to have their sex swapped, but I have the feeling that you're not unhappy about it. I blushed with a mouthful of pancakes. I thought so, Millie said with a nod. So that's how I knew you had been transformed and into a woman. That's also why you were transformed. As to how, it's just the town's magic. Now the next question is usually if they can leave the town. Well, of course you can. There's nothing stopping you from leaving. Though where you'll end up when you leave is random, within the United States. I've heard of towns in other countries that do the same thing, limited to their countries as well. But there is a catch as well. You won't have any personal stuff, not even your vehicle. During the night, while you transformed, they disappeared from town. Your vehicle may turn up without you, and the authorities will assume that you tried to walk in the storm, and perhaps fell through ice into a river and drowned. Your vehicle may never turn up. It just depends on how you were supposed to die. But going outside of town, you won't have any identity. So it depends on if you want to take your chances outside of town or to stay here. But that is a decision you get to make. I took a drink of orange juice, digesting what Millie had just said. When she figured enough time had passed for me to digest it, she said, now that usually leads to the question of jobs in town. There are the normal jobs you would find anywhere else, but also there are some unique jobs. Some of the residents can tap into the town's magic. Karen is one of those people. She runs a women's clothing store, and she may give you a job as a mannequin. I nearly spat out my juice. I know it seems incredible to someone that isn't from here, but Sally and Sarah spend their days as mannequins at her store and then work here at night. When do they sleep? I said, full of curiosity. Well, they sleep as mannequins, Millie said with a shrug. Now, one other question people have is, if it's permanently winter here, how do we cope? Well, we can leave town. Some have summer vacation homes where they go, and the town usually pops them out close enough by those homes that they can make it there within a few hours. Of course, there are those that decide to go to beaches, but the beach they end up at is random. The only ones that don't seem to be affected by the randomness are those who make deliveries to our town, and those passing through. So I think that's all the questions that most ask. Are there any questions you have? Why do you think you might be my mother now? I said, finishing my breakfast. Like I said, I don't usually waive the room fee, Millie said, looking down. I do have to have some income after all, but I just felt like I was supposed to waive it for you. Of course, everything being down was pushing toward that as well. Then there's this room. I usually don't rent it out unless we're full. I live here at the hotel, and my room is right across the hall. Taken all together, I think that you are my daughter now. Of course, if you stay and become a resident, then there will be an announcement in the town paper the next day, and what your last name is in the paper will tell us if you're my daughter or not. What if my name is different because I'm married? I said, thinking through the floor. Oh, the town doesn't force a marriage, Millie said, looking a bit shocked. The town may remake someone who was supposed to die, but it will not take choices like marriage or deciding to stay or not away. Those are for you to decide. You also don't have to take the last name of the person you marry. They could take your last name, or you can both keep your last name. We're not stuck in the Middle Ages. The church here even performs same-sex marriages, and they have yet to be struck down by God or the magic of the town. But of course, you don't need to get married by the church if you get married at all, and you don't need to go to church either. It's good to have the choice, I said, playing with the fork. I do have another question that may help me to decide if I want to stay. What is the view of transgender people here? Millie looked down and seemed to be in deep thought. After a moment, she said, that depends. We acknowledge that transgender people exist, but there are no residents who are transgender. And before you say anything, it's not like you're probably thinking. The town makes sure that every resident is in the body they were meant to have. If someone who is transgender moves here, then the town changes them, so they're not transgender. Of course, not everyone who is changed like that realizes they were transgender before. There's a family that moved here a few years ago, and the first night after the move, the husband became a woman. It was a shock to her and her wife and daughters, and she railed against the change, insisting that she was a man, and that we had best turn her back. The church provided counselling to her and her family, and she eventually came around to accepting that she's a woman. I don't think she's very happy about it still, but she accepts it. But our policy for those passing through or visiting is that if you look one way, that's how you'll be treated, as long as you don't make things really awkward or do something illegal like rape. Well, that's good, I said with a sigh. I know I won't be ostracised for having been transgender. You don't need to tell anyone who you were before, Millie said, placing a hand on mine. They don't need to know, but if you do tell them, they won't act any differently to you. Well, seeing as how I'm supposed to be dead, I'll stay in town, I said. Where will I stay, though? Well, this is your room now, Millie said with a smile. I said I'd waive the fee for the duration of your stay, and I'm sticking to that. However, I would like help around the hotel. You won't have to do much, just a few small things here and there, like helping with the front desk at times and cleaning up the pool area. There's a pool here? I said, perking up. Of course, Millie said, looking a little bit affronted. It's down in the basement. It's not that big, and there's a small sauna and 3 showers in there. Now, since you've finished eating, go ahead and get dressed, then I'll help with your makeup. I stripped out of my nightclothes right there and started getting dressed. Millie looked a little bit shocked at that, and maybe I was as well, but I didn't see what the difference would be if she saw me naked here, or in a locker room. I think I impressed her by not needing help with my bra or the skirt. Honestly, I didn't see how boys-turned-girls always had trouble with a simple bra or skirt in stories or games. I mean, I did know to position my breasts in the cups so they were comfortable and filled the cups, but other than that, it was simple. Once I was dressed, Millie put some nail polish on my nails and then put a light foundation on my face, plus lip gloss and some eyeshadow. When I looked in the mirror, I kind of liked what I saw. I wasn't too sure about the colour of the eyeshadow, with it being an orangish red, but it didn't look bad. Millie handed me a pair of hook earrings, which I proceeded to put in my ears. Well, all you need to do now is put on the boots, and we'll see how you walk in them, Millie said, looking a little concerned. She was right to be a little concerned. My shoes had been replaced with a pair of boots with a heel. I estimated the heel to be about 3 or 4 inches. I wasn't sure if the term high heel applied, but I knew that I was in danger of twisting my ankle if I wasn't careful. With a bit of trepidation, I put the boots on, almost with the zipper on the outside instead of the inside, but I caught it in time, and zipped them up, being careful of my nail polish. With deep breath, I stood up. I was a little wobbly at first, but I managed to stabilize myself. Millie nodded and said, "The important thing to remember about heels is that you want to bring your heel down first, but not at too much of an angle. That's how you get broken heels and twisted ankles. Take smaller steps than what you're used to." It took a few times going across the room, with the click-clack of the heels on the wood floor, before Millie was satisfied that I could walk in them and not twist my ankle. "I'll call Karen and tell her you're on your way," Millie said, handing me a purse. "Your keys are in there, plus a couple of pads and tampons in case you get your period." "Am I really going to get my period so soon after transforming?" I said, raising an eyebrow. "It's been known to happen," Millie said with a shrug. "There's also a wallet with some cash inside, in case you want to stop by any place else to get lunch." "You didn't have to do that, Millie," I said, shaking my head. "But I wanted to," Millie said with a smile. "Now go down to Karen's. It's about 6 blocks down Main Street. Oh, and what name do you want to go by now?" "I think I'll go with Kate," I said with a smile. After giving Millie a hug and putting on my coat, which had also changed, I left to go to Karen's place. Karen's women's clothing was pretty easy to find. I had driven past it when I arrived last night. There were 2 dress-form mannequins in the windows. I couldn't tell what they were made of, though. I didn't see any other mannequins through the windows or door, so that must mean they were Sally and Sarah. With a bit of nervousness, I opened the door and went inside. A woman at the counter looked up at me with a smile and said, "You must be Kate. Millie said you would be by soon. Now come here and let me have a good look at you so we can get you some new clothes." I kind of blushed and said, "You want me to strip right here where anyone walking by could see?" "Oh dear no," Karen said, looking shocked. "Millie told you that I'm able to tap into the magic in this town. Part of that is I know all of a woman's measurements, just by looking at them if they're close enough." I went up to her, and she looked at me with a thoughtful expression for a moment. She then said, "All right, I have your measurements." Now, Millie also told me that you seemed intrigued about Sally and Sarah being mannequins here. Is that something you would like to do? I looked at the dress forms in the windows and said, "I'm not sure. I don't know if I'd want to be a dress form." "Oh, you don't need to become a dress form," Karen said, waving her hand like she was dismissing my concern. "I can do full-body mannequins as well, in whatever material you would like. I will tell you that if you're a full-body mannequin, and a realistic one, then you will remain awake. Your mind will drift unless something catches your attention. It's not for everyone, and is why Sally and Sarah chose to be dress forms. They both did try being a realistic full-body mannequin, though. So, do you want to try it out for today and see if it's a job you would want?" I nodded and said, "I would like to try being a realistic full-body mannequin." I looked around the shop and said, "So what do you want me wearing?" It seemed that most of the items were geared towards summer. "What you're wearing now will be fine," Karen said with a smile. What you see isn't all that I have available. It's just what I feel like putting out. Come with me and we'll put your coat and purse in a locker. Oh, you'll want to take out your earrings as well, and if you're using a tampon, you'll want to take that out too. Why do I need to do that? I said, following her behind the counter and into a back room where she opened a locker for me to use. It's because if you don't, then those will fuse with your body, Karen said, being very serious. I'm not using a tampon right now, I said as I took out my earrings. I was just transformed overnight. How are you liking being a woman so far? Karen said, not batting an eye. It's great, I said with a genuine smile. I feel like myself for once. That's good to hear, Karen said with a genuine smile of her own, though all her smiles seemed to be genuine. Now let's get you back out to the floor and transformed into a mannequin. She led me back out and to the back of the store. This spot should do nicely. What about a stand? I said, thinking about toppling over and potentially breaking. Oh, the magic will keep you upright, Karen said, guiding me into the position she wanted. Now I'm going to touch your face, and when I do, you'll become a mannequin. Any preference for the material? I think plastic would be good, I said, thinking more of durability than anything else. All right, Karen said, and then touched my face. It was a strange sensation being turned into a mannequin. I felt my skin quickly become plastic and spread form the point Karen touched me. I had a moment of a panic attack when I stopped breathing, and I had to remind myself that mannequins don't breathe. One of the weirder parts was when my genitals changed. My inner and outer lips just disappeared, leaving that place kind of feeling like it did when I was a male but without a dick. Karen adjusted my pose to her liking before the change fully set in, and I could not be posed any longer. She had posed my head so I would be looking at the changing rooms. For some reason, my vision became a bit like a fisheye lens, enabling me to see all of the changing rooms and both windows and dress forms that were Sally and Sarah plus the door between them. I could even see my own eyelashes at the top of my vision. My mind didn't start to drift once my transformation was complete. I think I was too excited for it to. It was only a few minutes later when another woman came in and went behind the counter. When she came out, Karen said, Aisha, I'd like you to meet Kate. She's new in town and may be working with us as a mannequin. It's nice to meet you, Kate, Aisha said, smiling at me. We'll have to get breakfast sometime to get better acquainted. You can't really talk as a mannequin. But I do admire that you had the courage to be a realistic full-body mannequin for your first transformation. The day went by pretty quick. True to Karen's words, once the novelty wore off, my mind did start to drift. For me, it was enjoyable, like dreaming, but I was aware. Of course, my focus was drawn back when Karen or Aisha came near me, and when someone entered the store. Around 2 o'clock, a teenage girl came into the store and went behind the counter. When she came back, Karen said, Maria, meet Kate. She's new in town. Hi, Kate, Maria said with a smile. I know you're not in school and you're older than I am, but I hope we can be friends. Karen looked at her watch and said, I thought you had rehearsals today. Miss Johnson went into labour, so it was cancelled for today, Maria said with a smile. Oh, she's early, Karen said, her face showing surprise. I don't have everything for the welcoming party yet. And we also need to have a welcoming party for Kate. I'm sure Miss Johnson won't mind if you combine the party for her daughter with Kate's party, Maria said. I'll have to ask her, Karen said, looking thoughtful. But right now, we need to get back to work. During my next drift, I started to wonder if there were any males in this town. I mean, the church performed same-sex marriages, but was that because there were no males? Did every male that come through here end up being transformed into a female? That was brought to an end when the door opened, and in walked a man about my age now. I'm here to pick up my mother's dress, Karen, he said, leaning on the counter. I'll get it for you right away, Harold, Karen said as she disappeared into the back room. Harold looked around, and his eyes fell on me. I felt a bit of a flutter, and when Karen came back, he said, I see you have a new mannequin. I haven't seen her around before, though. She's new, Karen said, handing him a garment bag. Millie said she arrived last night. Is she staying, or is she going to try and start a new life outside of town? Harold said, his eyes saying that he hoped I was staying. Millie did say that she decided to stay, Karen said with a knowing smile. Well, I hope to see her about in town soon, Harold said. He gave me a wink and then left without asking what my name was. Then I thought about how I would be in the town paper in the morning, and I wouldn't be the only new person in town in the paper. He would more than likely be able to figure out who I am, if he reads the paper, which he must since he didn't ask my name. The end of the day came, and Karen closed up. She touched one of the dress forms, and immediately a head started to grow out of the neck, and arms grow out of the shoulders. Due to clothes on the racks, I couldn't see what happened with the stand she was on, but I could guess that it became her legs. Once that mannequin was done transforming, she went to the other one and did the same thing. She came back to me, and Sally and Sarah came with. I was kind of surprised that they were twins, though I don't know why I should be surprised. Karen touched me, and the transformation basically reversed, starting from where she touched my face. Once I was fully mobile again, I kind of stumbled, and Karen caught me. "You'll learn how to keep your balance if you become a mannequin enough times," she said with a smile. "Sally, Sarah, this is Kate. She's new in town." Sally and Sarah burst into giggles, and after calming down, one of them said, "We know. I did her laundry last night, so I recognize what she's wearing." "Oh right," Karen said, seemingly wanting to smack her own forehead. "I forgot that you two would already know." She then turned to me and said, "I have a wardrobe assembled for you, Kate. Don't worry about paying for it all at once. You can pay for it a little at a time when you can." Millie was going to pay for it, but I refused to let her since she's already letting you stay at the hotel for free. Sally and Sarah looked at each other in shock, and one of them said, "Did Kate become Millie's daughter?" The other one said, "Millie must think that, otherwise she wouldn't have given her that room for free." "That's enough speculation," Karen said, shaking her head. "You two need to get dressed. I doubt you want your clits to freeze." "Wait," I said, holding up a hand. "Are you saying they're not wearing any panties?" "Of course not," Karen said, almost bursting out in laughter. "They become dress form mannequins, and their legs become the stand. If they wore panties, leggings, socks, hose, pants, shorts, or shoes, those items would become fused with them. But I'll give you girls a ride to the hotel. I already have Kate's wardrobe loaded up, and it will go much faster unloading if we all carry some of it up to her room." After getting ready to leave, we piled into Karen's van, and she drove us the short distance to the hotel. It only took a couple of trips to get my new wardrobe up to my room. After that, Sally, Sarah, and I went down to eat in the small restaurant the hotel had. Karen went home to her wife. Sally and Sarah had omelettes, while I had spaghetti. We talked a little bit, and then Millie came in, and I said, "You know you gave me the room to stay in, but if you hadn't, where would I have been able to stay?" "Well, if you weren't going to stay here, then there are a few other places," Millie said, looking a little afraid. Was she afraid that I would leave if I knew where else to go? "The church has a few beds for those that need them. The high school has a couple of rooms for janitorial staff, but I've heard they're full, and you would have needed to get a job as one of the janitorial staff. Then there are several residents who have spare rooms and would take in a newcomer. You wouldn't have been left out in the cold." "That's good to know," I said. I took a bite of spaghetti, and after swallowing I said, "Do I have to do my own laundry now?" "Only if you want to," Millie said with a smile. "Sally and Sarah are happy to do the laundry, though. It helps them to pass the time during the nights." "Yeah, we're happy to do the laundry," either Sally or Sarah said. "Though if you wanted to do laundry as well, we wouldn't stop you." "Well, I am supposed to help out, so maybe I'll help with the laundry when there are more guests," I said with a smile. It wasn't long after that I finished eating and went up to bed. The next morning there was a paper at my door. Flipping through it, I came to a section for announcements. "We would like to welcome 2 new individuals to our little town of Winters Hollow. Miss Jadzia Johnson was born to Miss Deborah Johnson and Mr. Hank Johnson at precisely midnight. Jadzia came into the world weighing 8 pounds 7 ounces. Miss Kate Hartgrave came to us the night before due to a snowstorm. She is now the daughter of Millie Hartgrave. A welcome party for both Miss Jadzia Johnson and Miss Kate Hartgrave will take place next Saturday at the community centre." There were other announcements, but I stopped reading after that. So Millie was right. I was her daughter now. I smiled and wondered what I would wear to the welcome party. I also had to wonder if there would be another person to join the town before then.